Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. We've seen each other 3 times since I've moved here.
I see you if I'm taking care of your cat.
Which you are
Other
tomorrow.
than that, which means I won't see you.
You'll see the cat.
So no, I mean I don't. We don't see each other, but I know you're very close.
Yeah.
And I don't leave unless I'm going to teach. I don't really leave the house.
Right. So is it fair to say you are a self-proclaimed recluse, which is how I describe you to other
I think
friends?
it's other people. I think other people have called me it too.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's just. I think it's sort of a general fact. Yes, I would agree.
So we went, just for some background and context for the listeners here, for the 12 followers, we went to elementary school together. So childhood friends, went our separate ways during high school.
Mhm.
And then you went, to school locally in the Boston area, but to LA for a quick stint in PR. I was in New York for 10 years in media. And we somehow came back to this town outside Boston where we now are. I have mixed emotions about it, but I feel like
Yeah?
you're thriving.
I mean, I think it's the Rome of Middlesex County here in a lot of ways. I don't mind it. I spent a lot of time in Boston, so the fact that where we are is incredibly sleepy and boring, it doesn't bother me because I really just sort of sleep and work here.
Nice.
So yeah, I don't mind it. But I also lived in New York City for a summer and vowed to never live there again. So I can't do it like you can. I can't.
The question I like to ask everyone, which is one of my favorite questions. I actually don't know the answer, how I would answer it, but it's if you could invite one guest, living or dead, to a dinner party, who would it be?
This is a very hard question, and I came up with multiple answers. I came
Yeah.
up with 2 alive, 3 dead, 1 fictional. So
Interesting.
by
Which one do you-
top living would definitely be because he's like one of my favorite writers, and I've seen him talk publicly. David Sedaris would be high on my list.
Oh yeah.
Obviously funny,
Yeah.
but like he'll also be like just entertaining, I can imagine, like at dinner. So he would be a top one, David Sedaris. Also living, that would be Tilda Swinton,
Interesting.
because
Okay.
I don't know what it would be like to have dinner with an alien. And I think she is an alien. And that's my favorite thing about her. Like the best kind of alien. But like, what would she wear? What would we eat? Who knows?
Aliens are trending right now, so yeah.
They are. I always
hot
assume if
topic.
there's a UFO, I assume it's Tilda. And I don't know why. So yeah, they'd be up there for sure. Tilda Swinton, I've always been fascinated by. And the David Sedaris, because like part of me was like, oh, you just think of a famous person, but there's a lot of famous people I don't want to talk to.
Yeah, that's
true.
true.
So like as actual dinner, and when you say dinner guests too, I think there's going to be other people there. So then it's not just for my enjoyment.
Right.
It's like who would also just be good in the mix, There's a lot of people who are like, I would want to ask some questions, but nobody else would care.
Right.
So he's up there for sure. Dead people, I've always liked Paul Newman. I'd like to spend time with Paul Newman. That's more selfishly. Yeah. Dinner guest side, Truman Capote.
Interesting. Wow.
Definitely going to be a great dinner guest. I mean, he was like, granted, he was sort of working on a book that alienated him from all of his friends, but still, I think if he came to my dinner party, he would be fun. Those would be my 2 for dead. And fictional, it would be Agatha Christie's Poirot. I would like to have the detective Poirot be a dinner guest.
Would you have all these folks together, you think, at the same table, at the same dinner?
I actually think that could work as well. Yeah. I think because I think Tilda doesn't work with anybody else. So in a way she works with everybody because there's no natural pairing there. I think David and Truman would hit it off, both funny people. And then Paul Newman and Poirot. I don't know how that conversation would go, but I'm certainly interested in listening to it. Wait, so do you have an answer though for you?
I don't have an answer. I talked about this last night with
it's too hard.
With Pete. Yeah, no, it is too hard. And I love dinner parties, and I could take the most boring person, bring him to a dinner party. And I think that would just be really exciting for me.
See, that's the opposite of me. Mine is like, I know nothing will be good. Like the food will be bad. So who can I bring that will raise their game? So yeah, no, but I like the question. It's a lot to think about.
Yeah. Well, I think also dinner parties, and again, I grew up, with a deep love and appreciation for them, but and I love cooking and everything, but I do think dinner parties for me, I'm less interested when I go to a dinner party about eating the food. I mean, we're both gluten intolerant. I'm dairy free too. It's just a beast to invite me to a dinner party. It's just wine is the bottom of the food pyramid. But I'm less interested about food and more interested about the conversation. Like that's
Absolutely
why I go. So now I'm genuinely fascinated with Gen Z. We know a lot about Gen Z. They're the largest generation to ever enter the US workforce. They have a questionable work ethic. I do think that they are highly creative. I think they have driven this whole creator economy that we're seeing brands now being built upon, right? Just creators. And they're digitally native. I think millennials were digitally savvy. These are digitally native folks who don't know life without phones and devices. Which is interesting. So, but you're in the forefront of Gen Z. You are
I
teaching
only
them.
work with Gen Z. They're all of my coworkers are Gen Z, yes.
So who is Gen Z? Have I got it wrong? Like, who are these people?
Yeah, so I think if we go, and just like for context, because I know they always ask me what are the generations. I think it's mid to late 90s births to early 20 teens. So those types of folks. So like I think the negative stereotypes, you mentioned a few, lack of maybe a work ethic.
To be fair, I want to clarify that because I'm very nervous podcasting because I feel like everything's on the record and I am a journalist. My background is journalism.
Yeah.
I do want to say that Gen Z inherited a very different job market than millennials, right?
Sure.
We came in 2008, came in hot, and we were like, where are the jobs? And Gen Z came in really in the middle of a pandemic where they didn't even go to offices. So they were working, right. They were interviewing in pajamas, which is a luxury. And they're asking for six figures right out the gate, and they're getting six figures out the gate. So, and the job market's Canada driven. So there's a lot to be said. There's just, maybe I'm a little bit of like a burned millennial.
No, I get it. I mean, it's like, it is funny because it's only now where I look back and realize how bad graduating in 2010 from college was.
So bad.
So yeah, I have some of that too. I do think this, like, if we think about the stereotypes from, the short attention span, I think is a big one. Addicted to phones and just like lack of work ethic. Those are kind of some of them that I would think about. I would say some of that is certainly true in the digitally native thing. I think one of the issues is that they think because they're digitally native that they can multitask. The only problem is that nobody on earth can multitask. So
really, you believe
it's just not a thing. Yeah, I mean, the studies always show that like you just can't. Divided attention just results in divided attention. There's nobody who's just like magically good at doing everything.
Well, I think multitasking is like being on the phone and carrying groceries. Like that's
simple. To me, it's more like my multitasking is like, I'm in a group chat on my laptop and taking notes on the lecture, right? Like those two things are just never going to happen at maximum output, which I get. So I think that part is a little bit fair in the sense that they're not even like addicted to their phones, but everything is just wired for them in a way. Like I asked them, these are kids who got their first cell phone. One of them got their first cell phone at 11.
Oh gosh.
So for me, that is like very weird.
I wanted landlines forever.
And I actually got in a fight with a AT&T rep in Los Angeles because I thought I had scored a free coupon for 6 months of a landline for free. Long story short, I did not get that landline. I love landlines, sound great.
I think it's part of the package though, of like cable companies, they still bundle that in and they're like,
they will bundle it in. I just kind of wanted a one-off. I was like, no, I just want the landline. They didn't really understand.
I wanted the jitterbug.
He said that I didn't. Yeah, he said I didn't have the right like code, and I was like, well, how long would the code be? And he was like, it's 6 digits, and I started guessing. He got mad. I was like, okay, let me try another one. But so back to the Gen Zers. In that sense, I would say that some of that stuff is absolutely true, addicted to tech, but they're not like nearly as what's the way I would put it? Like I respect the way that at least my students at these like what are kind of inherently creative institutions, like they tend to do interesting things with their technology. like in the sense that they are, to your point, like there's a lot of people, like I had a student who ran like a wildly popular Stranger Things fan account, like thousands and thousands of people, to the point where I kind of thought it was like a joke. And then she explained like, no, it took over my life. I had to stop because it was so much work. But she was telling me about like all the stuff she learned about like how to like what times to post and how to engage people. You know, I think there's a big difference between just consuming a ton of stuff and like actually creating stuff.
Yep.
And I do think that Gen Z is, because I think they're comfortable with it, they're just better at that type of sort of thing. So I think that part is unfair. In terms of the work ethic, you know, I've been lucky. I think I usually get some pretty motivated students. My problem is that I was a horribly unmotivated first year college student. So I can't really blame them too much.
Yeah.
But in the workforce, I mean, it would be totally different, because I've heard horror stories from friends who work with Gen Zers and they want to just like leave work forever, maybe the country even.
Right.
That's how much it bothers them.
Well, they're dropping out of the workforce like right when they. This is me stereotyping, but the sweeping.
Well, it's just the statistics, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there are statistics behind it. What do they do though? I mean, what would you do if you dropped out at 24?
TikTok.
Yeah,
Before
I
the
don't
US
know about
bans
that.
it. Yeah.
Do you know about Be Real?
Yes. So this is the latest new social platform. First of all, I dabbled in TikTok. Have you been on TikTok? It is
Never, not once. Because
okay.
I've gone onto it on a browser and I realized it was so addictive that I said I will never get the app on my phone. I can't do it.
I don't think addictive is the word I would use to describe it. So I'm an Instagram user. That's my, I think, platform of choice. I've never really loved social media. I really think privacy. I think the pendulum swings both ways. I think we will actually start to value privacy a lot more as we as we go on. But TikTok, I spent 5 minutes on TikTok when I first downloaded it. Just 5 minutes, and I had to put it down. And I just remember like staring at Bo, my cat, and being like, what did I just consume? It was the most chaotic 5 minutes of content consumption. Just every song imaginable, any person, any environment. It was wild. It was a roller coaster.
Yeah,
and
that part I don't. It's too much content for me.
It is.
And it's. Yeah, so I've never really been tempted. I mean, they're constantly referencing TikTok videos. But this gets under an answer for a later question, but I don't even bother to pretend I know what's going on anymore. However, Be Real, if asked to be in somebody's Be Real photo for the day, I will always say yes.
And it's just this one-time hit, right? And then
one
it disappears.
time. A thing goes out to all of them and it says it's time. And you have to take it right then. Of course, you don't. You can take it later and it just says that it's late. So by the way, it doesn't make any sense. But sometimes they'll say it just went off. Do you want to be in my Be Real? I will always say yes. Yes, I will be.
Do you think there's an opportunity there for Port Wine to explode?
And Be Real. Yeah.
Only because I joined TikTok for a hot second. I'm still technically on it, deactivated. But Port Wine had a moment on TikTok. I don't know if you've realized this. It went viral.
No, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, so that's why I joined it. And I was like, let me introduce the Real Port Wine Challenge, which is to have everyone really learn more about it. But for the most part, the TikTok creators were drinking a port wine style that was from the Finger Lakes of New York. So not an authentic port. It needs to come from Portugal, from the Douro Valley, in order to be declared an authentic port wine. So I was trying to clear that up, and I don't think
brands have gotten into Be Real yet, so I think it's only a matter of time. You might as well be the first.
Be the first.
Port wine might as well just take Be Real.
Done.
I think that why not?
Why not? I mean, podcasting is very archaic. So
Exactly.
All right. So getting back to Gen Z, because I'm fascinated with them because I put together in the brand overview deck of Starboard, I built a case for port wine with Gen Zers in the sense that they do they have an appreciation for nostalgia, and that's deeply, I love that. I'm the most nostalgic person I know. I think that's the only adjective to describe myself.
Yes.
I am a minimalist. I throw everything out, but I will save, a cork from a wine bottle I drank with, whoever. So I have a lot of wine corks. Yeah. But getting back to Gen Z, what have they, you're teaching them, obviously. What are some of the things you've learned that they've taught you? Valuable lessons, funny lessons.
So I'm not sure if this is a valuable lesson, but Facebook is definitely dead.
It is.
That would be one lesson that they have taught me, is that that's over. There's no more of that. For them, for them, that is no longer a thing. They all laugh whenever Facebook comes up. I don't even think they changed their name to Meta. That's how out of it they are. They just don't even know. The other thing I've learned is that, like, if you turn your back and you're doing something mildly entertaining or embarrassing, they're probably filming you. So you should always be looking to see if they're just watching you. Okay, they're always watching you. You got to remember that. They're always filming you. It's terrifying. Luckily, it's usually when I'm doing something silly, like in my international section, I decided to write research essay, and I looked it up, and I wanted to write it in Mandarin. Because 18 of the 19 students are from China, and I was like, oh, I've never tried this, I'll do it. And I turn around when I'm done, they're all just filming me having written Mandarin. So, like, it's not something where it's going to be embarrassing, but it's just funny because, like, they're just so quick to, like, boom, I have my phone and I'm just like capturing something. So they are, in that sense, they're always filming you. One thing I would say, I guess, that they've taught me, because I am a like old person in a youngish person's body, that I'm cynical and pessimistic and all that. And so I kind of figured going in to teach Gen Z that they would all just be sort of robots who didn't want to like talk with their voices and just like be on their apps. And I would say, and this kind of goes into, I guess, like with port wine, is that, like, the end of the day, the conversation is still the thing that gets people engaged in the classroom. Like, I think that is one misconception about them, is that they're all just sort of like staring at their feed and they don't actually want to talk with anybody. And I think it's that, like, good conversation still kind of really matters. Like, and it makes them happy. Like, the classes that go well are the ones where we're all chatting and laughing and learning. And so, like, in that sense, that's sort of a hopeful thing for me. Because going in, I was like, oh, well, they're all just going to be doing TikTok and then they'll email me once a semester. But no, you actually talk and get to know people, and it's great.
Yeah. And that to me is where I'm hopeful too, getting back to the nostalgia thing.
Yeah.
Because they are so in front of their phones, they, I think, they want the tangible things, right? The things that are a little bit more like old world or old school, not even old world, but old school things, right? Where I think that there's a place for port wine there, bringing back something old, making it new. But
totally, like, no, I think I really do think you're right, because, like, I have a totally normal hobby, which is collecting typewriters. And
wait, time out. I thought you didn't like to hoard things.
So, I don't, but I have 5 typewriters, which is 5 more than you need. But they're all a certain brand. I've gotten into Olympia typewriters. That's a brand I really like out of West Germany. Anyway, we all have our typewriter stories, okay? I don't want to drown you in those. But when I've brought it up before, it's always like a thing they're really into. And then it'll turn out that they collect things. Like, they're really into collectibles, and oftentimes it will be like vintagey. So vinyl records. And I feel like when people our age were into vinyls, it was sort of just a strictly pretentious thing. But for them, it really is like they like material things.
Yep.
And I think that there will always be sort of that nostalgia for them, because there is no, for them, like, the stuff they're nostalgic for is like Penguin Club or something that was like an internet, like, it's a thing that's not real. You can't actually like hold it. So I think they do get into vintage things, which is why, I think that you should be optimistic about that.
As long as they're not bringing back Tamagotchis, I mean, then we're good.
Did we stop? Because I've been keeping mine alive for 25 years.
You're still feeding it.
He's still fine. Yeah, no, it's fine.
If you guys hear a beep during this podcast, Christian has to go feed his Tamagotchi.
It's my Tamagotchi that I thought we were all still doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I think it's possible. I mean, vintage clothes too. Vintage clothes come back. They get into the thrift shopping. It's all coming.
So, in terms of more valuable lessons, what are you teaching? Is there any moment, or I guess like story, that you have a teaching moment where you were surprised, entertained. I'm sure you have stories aside from the filming thing. That's pretty
yeah,
ridiculous.
that is pretty ridiculous. I mean, literally all of them just staring at me.
Yeah.
And besides that, the one other problem with Gen Z is I am 35, which is not like cosmically very old.
Oh,
But
we're
it is
ancient.
sad when you realize, like, I now bat like 1% in my film references. And it's so sad. It's so, like I mentioned, Training Day with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke. And I'm thinking, well, everyone knows Denzel Washington. When they didn't know Training Day, I was like, well, you know Denzel Washington. And then one of them was like, yeah, I think I do. And I was like, I don't.
Oh, wow.
I don't know where to go with this.
I don't watch a lot of movies. I'm just glad that they finally made the remake of Top Gun, because I just lived and died and ate the first Top Gun. That was my favorite. And thank God I don't have to explain that to people, because it was like the #1 blockbuster. Like,
yeah,
the only movie that came out.
And a lot of them saw that.
Okay,
and they
good.
enjoyed Maverick. So that was a real positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they've definitely never. I think they think Tom Cruise is like probably like an AI creation who's not even a real person.
Well, he is on TikTok. There's a deep fake Tom Cruise account that has gone viral, and deep fake is actually terrifying. I don't know if you've seen this. It's just AI gone wild. I don't even know. It's pretty. You can put your face, on.
Well, so that that is the thing that's recently surprised me, is when all of these new AI tools came out, a lot of the thinking was like, well, everyone's just going to never write an essay again. And which worried me for a number of reasons, because I like to eat. And I need a job.
To feed yourself?
Yeah, because I like to feed myself. And it was interesting because when I brought it up, a lot of them kind of had and they were being sincere about it. They were like, yeah, I guess that's kind of cool, but like I kind of want to write my own ideas. Like they had a very funny, like it was totally sincere. It was just like, yeah, but like, what about what I have to add to it? Which in a way you could see as like oddly Gen Z egotism, right? Of like, but if we don't have my opinion on the topic, then how the hell is anybody going to get anywhere? But like, there is that constant pessimism. It just hasn't been my experience at all. Like the way in which the students who use generative AI tools is as a tool and not, I don't know. They're curious. I feel like my generation, yours, maybe even, let's pretend I'm 20 years older than you.
We're both, like
at least in our upbringing too, like grades were kind of everything. And I think that with evaluation, things like, oh, you can generate an essay and get a 95. That's great. But it is there is sort of something to a lot of the students I tend to teach. Like the only way they're going to be interested in the course is if you make it interesting, because at the end of the day, they don't particularly care if they get an A, because they're probably not going to law school.
Right.
So it's interesting. And I think that can actually be a healthier outlook for them.
Do you think, though, there is a place, and you've been obviously supportive of Starboard being on this podcast with my immense reach. Really, I'm just trying to give you a platform, because I do find
I appreciate it.
One of the most interesting, funniest people I've met, or I know. And I have a very small circle, so I don't know if that says a lot.
We've already made it clear I don't leave the house. So yeah, but two very social people.
Yeah, I leave the house. There's just nowhere to go. So
that's the problem. Hop on the train.
It's a huge problem. But I don't think that Boston, and here's where I'm going to lose a lot of listeners. I have nothing to lose. I don't think that Boston, and I can say this because this is my hometown.
Yeah, sure.
I love Boston. I was in New York for 10 years. I don't think I don't think it's mutually exclusive. Like, you don't have to love or hate. It's kind of like, dare I say Megan and Kate. Like, you don't have to love one and hate the other. I think that you can both appreciate.
Although, as someone who doesn't follow that story, it seems you do have to. I think that comparison, judging from what I've read, but anyway, keep going. Yes. Listen, I've never met anybody who goes, look, Megan and Kate, I love them both. I've never heard of that.
I worked my first job at ABC News Radio. I was an associate producer, and I was dubbed the unofficial U.S. royal correspondent. I kept up with it was a very noble title. I still to this day It's my fun fact, if anyone asks.
That's a great title.
Yeah. So if anything was breaking in the royal family, which is obviously worldwide global news, they would just come to my desk and I'd be like, what do you need to know? This was before, I think, Google alerts. I'm really dating
Right.
myself.
Yeah. They needed you.
I know. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying about
New York and Boston.
I just find Boston has so much potential. I find it to be an extraordinarily accessible, beautiful, clean city, especially since the big dig and everything. But I think it's wasted on, there's no energy. Everything closes down early. And I think that has to do with the fact it's not a residential city in the same way that New York is. So in New York, you're living in your apartment and people are going by on their way to coffee and groceries and life is just happening. In Boston, I think it's a little bit, there are residential neighborhoods. I lived in the South End. Of course you do have that feel, but it's not the same energy. And
yeah, I feel like if the South End, like if there were more areas like the South End, it would feel a lot different. But
there's Beacon Hill, there's Back Bay, the Seaport's huge. I lived in the Seaport for a year. But it's just a different animal than New York City. And I just am finding
that's what I love.
Just putting the icing on the cake. Are you hopeful that Gen Z would be open to drinking port wine while they're listening to their records?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Yeah. My only thing is it just is a matter of how it becomes, like how they learn about it. And then it'll become a trend and then everyone will be doing it. That's what's, is so easy about it. It's just a matter, like, I don't know what happened. Let me tell you something that will reveal how old I am. I don't know what happened that made chunky Fila shoes popular.
I don't even know what those are.
So there's like Fila shoes, but the ones that the sneakers everybody was wearing, the bottom, the soles are super thick, chunky soles.
Okay.
And every girl all of a sudden around campus was wearing these types of shoes.
Okay.
How does that happen? I don't know. But
a celebrity wears them. That's how.
Something happened and everyone's NASA. Why was NASA? Like suddenly everybody was wearing NASA logo shirts and sweatshirts.
You're right.
How'd that happen? I don't know. That happened. So it's all just a matter of getting that moment where people realize and then it becomes the thing. Like in a way, it's never been easier and never been harder to make something popular. Because there's so much going on, but it could be anything. Anything can click.
Right. And it is honestly the responsibility of the wine industry, quite honestly, in order to right the ship a little bit, to educate and inspire younger consumers. And I'm a marketer. I've worked in marketing for a long time now. And I'm still like, okay, which platform, which medium? And I just think the more you talk about it and the more you introduce people to it, I think then it slowly starts to, but I do think you need to connect it to something much bigger.
Right. And while none of my students, because they're all younger and under 21, none of them would ever drink, of course, because it would be against the law. Yeah. I do think I don't get as much of the sense as when I was in college, like we would have like wine parties and whatever. And I feel like, the other things, the hard seltzers and all that stuff is sort of taking center stage. Wine needs to figure out how to. And I think the way to do it is to sell the nostalgia and the sort of the past, because you're not going to be able to compete with whatever the latest energy vodka drink is.
I know.
That has weed in it. The other thing, here's what I'll tell you that I wish my Gen Z students, because it's funny, because if I say I'm a millennial, they're like, oh, millennials, which is just a rite of passage.
Really?
Because they just hate every other generation, right? And I told them, like, I can't wait for like 10, 15 years from now, when every article being written in magazines is about how you're killing things. Like, do you remember when millennials killed the power lunch? And millennials couldn't buy houses because of the avocado toast? Like, I can't wait. Like, I was like, this is what happens. Like, right now, it's like boomers and millennials. Well, but one day, you will have your time in the sun, where it is your fault for every single thing that happens on the planet. And I enjoy it.
That's so true. Do you have a least favorite generation? Like, the word boomer comes to mind, but
I mean, I'll tell you, I don't have a least favorite. The generation I always wish I was a part of is Gen X. I love Gen X with every bone in my body.
Okay, so this is interesting because Gen X is raising Gen Z.
Yeah, I could see that.
Well, they are like factually.
Yeah, no, I mean, but like even the way that it works.
The only way,
no, but the way that those two tie together makes sense to me, because I see the Gen Xers just being like, yeah, do whatever you want, like start a TikTok, cool.
Because I'm like looking at Gen Z and I'm like, it's not your fault. Like that Good Will Hunting scene, like it's not your fault. I'm like, it's your parents' fault. So I'm like, who are your parents? And then I'm like, oh, and I'm like, Gen X or Gen, they're just unknown. They're hidden.
I wish I was in there. I just think of all the great Ethan Hawke movies of the early 90s. That was my time.
Before Sunset and
that Reality Bites, that world, that was me. And I would just miss my time. But yeah, Gen X is my favorite. I mean, the ones I don't like, I don't know. Because of where I work, like I am a defender of Gen Z for sure. I think Gen Z has a lot to give, and I just don't know the last generation that everyone didn't think was going to destroy the universe when they were 18. You know? I know we were. Everyone hated us. We were going to be awful. And now people look back and they were like, God, we thought millennials were lazy. They're workhorses compared to Gen Z. I mean, it's everything. It's just
interesting. So what's your legacy going to be? You're a teacher. Like what would your teaching legacy to be? The imprint that you leave on folks?
I think it's the fire I put out in 2040. No, it's... I die in that fire and everyone remembers.
We're not in LA, no.
I don't know. I mean, what will my legacy be? I mean, here's what I'll say. Talk about millennial work ethic. I spend way too much time on grading and doing my job, but I do really like it. And I think I can be hopefully I can be like a good segue from college to actual life. Yeah, no, the only thing I tell them moving forward is that they are always willing to ask me for recommendations and anything short of bail money. So I will always help them down the line. If they pass my course, I am at their disposal forever when it comes to writing. And yeah, I just, it's fun to meet people at a time when they're like trying to figure out who they are.
I know.
And it's because I was at 18, I was so different. Like I didn't talk in classes. So like, I think I'm in a good place too, because I realized that most of them are just terribly depressed, because that's what I was. So I know where they're at. Yeah.
Like what do they have to be depressed about? They're
the same things everyone else does. They have relationships. They've also grown up in a world where, like, since they learned since they could hear words, they've been told that like the planet's going to explode in 5 minutes. So they've grown up in this like very apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
They didn't have the end of high school, just didn't exist. They were all on laptops. So yeah, they got Freud's up the wazoo, which is my type of kid. That's what my sister-in-law's mom used to call when you had like anxiety or depression. She just said you had Freud's, which I've always liked as a way to put it.
Sounds like a syndrome or a disease.
Yeah, you got Freud's.
Yeah, you got Freud's. Okay. So you're hopeful about Gen Z. This conversation actually made me feel very reassured that we're moving forward in a healthy, positive way.
Yeah. I'll tell you one last thing, because God knows you want to hear more about my thoughts about Gen Z, is I like, one thing I like about them is I feel like when I was in college, it wasn't cool to like stuff. Like you always, like when you liked a thing, you were always like kind of shy about admitting you liked it. So it's like, I like but you were like trying to pretend it was like maybe ironic just in case people were going to judge you.
There you go.
Whereas these kids are just like very honest fans of like, yeah, I love Taylor Swift. I'm like, she's awesome. And other people are like, you're right, she's great. And all these other people, like they kind of like wear their heart on their sleeve with what they like. And it's not like any type of insecurity around it, which I do appreciate.
And I think actually that plays into their social media and being vulnerable. Like they're on talking to them, like everyone's an influencer.
Everything.
And putting any kind of content out there, you're just being judged. And the internet is a hateful, spiteful place. People are mean. You can't control it. It is what it is. But I do have an appreciation though for people who are, okay about being open to being judged and freely admitting what they like, don't like.
And speaking of Freud's, I mean, they're the first generation that has grown up like kind of thinking deeply about what their personal brand is, which is really strange. It's like, I want to have a consistent brand across my, and it's not because they're selling anything. They're just like selling, this is me, Kevin. Like, what is my brand for the world? That's something I didn't think about.
It's something that it's so nuanced, and I think that Gen Zers do it really well. I think everyone is their own brand, and I'm a branding fiend. I mean, I will brand anything.
You have to.
But you have to. So I respect them for that. I mean, that is a very interesting.
I mean, they are like, that is the water they swim in, which is just like, because this will come up in conversations the way we talk about it. Like, they don't even realize that that's what they're doing, but it's what they're doing. They're like making these choices of sort of, what is my aesthetic? Like, what is my Instagram trying to be and do? And that stuff is fascinating, but also not a world I want to live in, but don't tell them that.
Well, my last question for you, I already know the answer to this. Do you drink port?
Okay, here's the thing.
Listen, the headwinds are very strong for me already with this podcast. I opened it up with a report that is just rocky at best, and we're closing it out now.
But here's the thing. I don't drink port because I don't drink anything and haven't for about 6 years. But I support other people drinking.
Yeah.
This is one of the nicest things anybody ever said to me was, Christian, you're one of the few sober people I like drinking around. And I took that as a great compliment, because there's nothing, I actually, as someone who doesn't drink, I find dry January insufferable, because it is such this like high horse, oh, I'm doing dry January, and it's like, who cares? Like, nobody cares that I don't drink. Nobody cares that you aren't drinking this month. Nobody cares.
Yep.
So I would say port, I like that it's got a little bit of action to it. It's not a thing you're not drowning in port news. So I like it. It's something different in America, at least, that I don't really encounter. So yes, drink port. Not me, but yes, other people should.
Do you think you've learned more about port wine through just following Starward and just hearing, I guess?
Of course. Yeah. I didn't know like anything about it. I mean, really, I kind of thought it's sort of along the lines of, what do they drink in Frasier, in the show Frasier? They drink, oh my goodness. Sherry.
Yes.
And like, I don't really know what sherry is, you know what I mean? But it was something where when it's in the show, it was interesting. Like, what is that?
So fortified wines have a long way to go with, I think, consumer education here in the United States. We didn't grow up drinking them. We don't drink them. I will say port wine and a lot of fortified wines like sherry are having moments in cocktails right now. So that is that's an up and coming thing, or a movement that's already happening. But
yeah, I mean, why not port? Isn't that the question we're all asking? Why not port?
Why not drink port?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
so that's my take. Do I drink it? No. Do I think everyone else should? Yes. Especially the losers in dry January. Once it's February 1st, go get port.
Go get port. You heard it.
And by the way, that was not impressive what you did, not drinking for a month. Let me leave you with this one thing, because this will make your day. Berkeley, what I like is faculty email drama. And so they sent out a thing about a woman who works in the registrar office who's leaving. And so, of course, people liked her. I don't know. Who gives a shit? But so everyone, the way they set it up, it was in the CC. So everyone's replying all. And I knew it was only a matter of time until somebody was like, cut it out. So this guy said, please keep the messages to yourself. Many of us do not want our emails cluttered with these well-meant, wished for a particular department thanks. And then somebody just responded to him, hi, Wayne. Everyone here is sharing meaningful and thoughtful considerations for a colleague. If you find that annoying, you can learn how to mute email threads to not receive any notifications. Have a great weekend. That's my life, just reading emails like that.
I've never written a nasty email like that. I haven't.
Never.
In my career.
Could never.
I couldn't because it's tracked. I mean, You know?
I mean, and this is literally to like everyone who works at the school. And it's like, yeah, here I am. Well, and I totally agree with your point, though. These kids are so starved, especially after the pandemic, for like in-person conversation and socializing. Like, I think there will be a big kick in that. They all will go to, I mean, my students are like artsy kids, but they all go to concerts all the goddamn time. They just want to do things.
Well, I think that's everyone, Christian, but you.
Not me.
Everyone but you.
I'm just glad you didn't bring up Anka Fair. I thought that was where this interview would start.
I thought about it. Okay, now we have to go there. No, okay. So 5th grade, let me set the scene. You had an LL Bean forest green backpack that said CPH embroidered. Correct. Everyone in the Northeast had LL Bean backpacks. That was a thing. You were standing at your locker in the basement level. They've redone the elementary school. And it was a big moment for me. And I walked up to you in 5th grade and tapped you on the shoulder. And I was like, will you go to Anka Fair with me this weekend? Like my hopes, dreams, aspirations were riding on your response. And you were just like, you didn't even think about it. You were just like, no.
I don't think that's how that happened. I really don't.
Yes, it was. And I don't think you even went to the fair. So this isn't.
But because you used to create this other thing where I went with Jackie, which I did not. I didn't go with anybody.
1 year you did.
Maybe
I think you went with Louisa.
Here's the thing.
1 year.
If I did respond that way, it is because I don't like rides.
I don't either.
And it
That's
was
why
coming
I
from a
suggested
place
the Ferris
of
wheel.
me being insecure. It was not saying no to you. It was saying no to the experience. And also, I think most likely you've misremembered this completely. And I was nothing but a perfect job.
I still think about that moment. But the good news now that we're back in town, that the fair goes on.
Do you want me to take you to Anka back?
Absolutely not. I'm actually terrified of rides.
If I could do it all over again, I would have paused, thought deeply about it, and then said no. But I would have paused. I would have made you think I'd been thinking about it.
Do you think you being on the podcast and feeding my cat makes up for the fact that you said no?
100 times, yes.
Okay, perfect.
I mean, more so.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to Drinkport, a podcast from Starboard. Interested in being featured? Visit starboardwine.com/podcast to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter so you can join the venture to a new port. Cheers and drink port.